Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie, I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. I knew I was going to be talking a lot about internal technologies this year. That was always part of the plan. And if you go back and have a look at my blog post for the 2025 energies, you'll see I talk about the advancement in internal technologies, which are reflective of the advancement of the external technologies. So I always knew this was going to be a topic that I was going to discuss. I perhaps didn't think I would be answering this specific question, which is the podcast episode for today, which is ChatGPT the Akashic Records? Are they the same thing? And I really want to get into this question quite deeply. I want to go into my answer quite deeply because what we are going to see over the coming years is this narrative and this push to not bothering to develop our connection to our internal technologies, not putting the energy and effort and attention into that work, and instead outsourcing that to external technologies. And there's a reason that this is going to happen. I will not be surprised when somebody develops an app which is, you don't need to go and see an Akashic Records reader, you can just download the app. That will not surprise me when that day happens. And today I want to talk about why this can't be done, and also to remind you all of your own power in this conversation. I do not want anyone to think that I am telling them how to live their lives or how to go about their spiritual development, but I do think it's important that we have conversations around these topics because they are going to come up a lot more over the coming years, and I'm just sharing my opinion and my perspective. You use your free will, you decide what resonates, you discern what is for you, and you make your own decisions. So the short answer to this question is ChatGPT the Akashic Records. The short answer is no. And this question was raised to me by one of my students. I understand that this question has come up because there's been different conversations on various social media platforms about ChatGPT having the ability to go into the Akashic Records. Now, the short answer is no. So if that's all you needed to know, the rest of the episode isn't for you, but I want to go into why the answer is no, because this is something that you're going to hear a lot more of in the coming years, and I just want to share my perspective. Now, I have not come across a post where someone is asserting that ChatGPT and the Akashic Records are the same thing. I've definitely seen it in people's comment sections, and if there is such a narrative going around, my hope is that the individuals who are saying this are using it metaphorically. So, like I would say, using the Akashic Records is like having a Google for the soul, so that you can type into a search bar a question and you can ask a question and you can receive an answer. So I would use it metaphorically, and I could see how somebody would use the ChatGPT analysis metaphorically. So it's the ability to ask questions about your soul and receive an answer. If that is the case, there's nothing wrong with that. What we have to remember when we're using metaphorical language, so when we're using something else to describe what it is that we're trying to describe, because describing the Akashic Records is quite hard, what we have to remember is that there is a proportion of people who are going to take things very literally, okay? And this is because of where we are at from a human consciousness perspective. When you come into your spiritual development, you're going to see there's lots of storytelling, there's lots of parable, there's lots of metaphors, there's lots of things used to describe things to point you in the direction of you having your own experiences. Because in a spiritual context, from a spiritual development perspective, the most important thing is your own individual experience and understanding that. And for any of you who have had very high dimensional mystical experiences, you know that trying to describe that with words, because we are limited by words, is extremely difficult. And what you'll see within all esoteric traditions is that there comes a point in the understanding where symbol is used. And symbol is used because there is an inability to actually describe certain things with words, and the symbol is designed to activate within you a certain experience so you can experience that for yourself. So I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt here in respect of, I'm assuming that this is being used metaphorically to explain how you can use the Akashic Records is similar to how you would do a search on ChatGPT or a chat on Google. First of all, let's get back to basics and let's talk about what ChatGPT is and what the Akashic Records are. My understanding about what ChatGPT is, and I will caveat here that I am not a technical analyst or somebody who is very up on technology. Obviously, I use technology for my business, but I am not an expert in any way, shape or form. But my understanding of what ChatGPT is that it's a large language learning model, I think is the term that's used. And essentially what it does is it is fed by all of the information that is out there on the internet. Okay, so it is trained by, I believe, humans. It's fed this information. So when you do a search on ChatGPT, it's searching all of its huge memory database to provide you with the most effective answer. And obviously you train your ChatGPT, as I understand it, to do certain things with prompts. Okay, so it's not creating an answer from anywhere other than information that is already available. It's just summarizing it and it's taking it from all of these different sources. That's my understanding of how ChatGPT works. Let's compare that to the Akashic Records. So with your Akashic Records, what you are doing is you are tuning into higher multidimensional levels of information from the Akasha, which you may see referred to as the Akashic field, or you may see it referred to as the quantum field, but you're tapping into that. So this is not information that is already out there on the internet. This is information from higher sources, and you do this by utilizing your own internal technology. Okay, the human form is absolutely amazing and it is divine. And we have an internal technological system that we have access to. Everybody has an internal technology and everybody has access to it. For example, your intuition, so your intuitive system, is part of your internal technology. Those clairsensors that we talk about, they are part of your internal technology. And if you go back to that blog post that I talked about, 2025, what you will see is this year is going to be heavily focused on understanding that these external advancements in technology, which are so fast and so big, are representative of the internal technology advancements that are available to us. This is the principle of as within, so without. So we have this internal technology. We can utilize that internal technology to tap into these higher dimensions to receive guidance and to understand things. This is what we can do. And the Akashic Records is a modality that you can utilize. Everybody has the right and the ability to work with their own Akashic Records. It's a modality that you can utilize to start to tap into those higher dimensions. Okay, from a New Age terminology perspective, the Akashic Records is fifth dimension and above. They exist over multiple dimensions. They are not in a fixed location. Okay, ChatGPT, of course, you are going to utilize an external technology. So you are using something outside of yourself to tune into the intelligence of, the artificial intelligence of ChatGPT. So it's outside of you. This is the difference between internal and external technologies. Now, all of the spiritual paths, traditions, practices are designed to help you develop and strengthen that relationship to the internal technology that you have. Whether it's yoga, Kabbalah, Tantra, Buddhism, whatever system practice you're working with, they are all designed to help you deepen that connection to that internal technology, to know thyself. That's what all of them are about. So we can see that when we look at what is ChatGPT and what are the Akashic Records, they are two very, very different things. Okay, now why I wanted to go into this today is because what we have to understand is that part of the de-evolutionary stream of consciousness narrative that we are all under the influence of here on planet Earth at this time is a transhumanistic agenda. And I can go into this in more detail if people would like that in future podcast episodes. But there is this push for transhumanism that we are experiencing. And this flavor looks like at this moment in time, you don't need to do the internal work. You don't need to worry about these higher spiritual realms. They're not even real. Don't worry about all of that. Just rely on this technology that we're creating for you. Okay. And this is a narrative of our time that we have to use our discernment and our resonance as to decide how much we want to participate in that narrative. So I am not for 1 minute saying using technology is bad or wrong. Let's all go back to living off-grid and not making use of any of these services. We cannot survive in today's age without utilizing technology. Most of the time you can't really survive without having a smartphone because of the way that everything is online. And of course, I would be a huge hypocrite if I was telling people to do that or recommending that people do that, because I run my business online. This podcast is being recorded and it gets transcribed by AI. So I'm not for 1 second saying we must banish all technology, don't have anything to do with that. What I am saying is we need to first of all remember our own divinity and our own internal technology. That's very, very important. The second thing that we need to remember is how much we are influenced by this narrative and how much we buy into the narrative is up to us. That's where our free will comes in. So we get to choose how much we use these things. We get to choose how much we use ChatGPT, for example. And I know lots of people who run businesses who find ChatGPT very, very helpful. So there's nothing wrong with that. What we have to remember, though, is this narrative is part of a bigger agenda, which is a transhumanistic agenda, which has been around for thousands of years. This transhumanistic agenda is nothing new. And as I said, I can do another podcast episode on that if you want me to. We have to remember that spiritual development and developing your connection to and use of your internal technology is hard. Okay. A lot of the time people will come into the spiritual community or spiritual development and want it all to be very quick. This is a sign of our age. We want quick fixes. We want easy. We don't want to have to do the work. But it is difficult. It does mean facing where you have energetic stagnation. It does mean taking time. It does mean slowing down. All of the things that our society is essentially saying we shouldn't do. So it is a difficult thing to do. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes practice. And back in the olden days, if you were drawn to spiritual development, you would have entered a mystery school, or you would have entered a specific tradition and path and gone off and focused solely on your spiritual development. And I see this a lot with people in their Akashic Records where they've had lifetimes where they've done that. And for a lot of people, this lifetime is actually learning how to balance the spiritual development and everything that goes along with that and a normal life, so the life of a householder. And it can be a hard balance, you know, but when you start to take everything that happens in your life as your teacher, your guru, and you start to work with what life is presenting you, it can make it easier. But you might not be able to spend 8 hours a day meditating like you would have done in a past life in a traditional order. And if your soul has chosen to be a householder in this lifetime, there's a reason for that. And it's the reason to say, look, you've done these lifetimes where you've just focused on your spiritual development. Now we need to merge both. Now we need to learn how to be a fully developed human who is also a spiritual being. Okay, so this is very important. We need to always remember that our soul has chosen the kind of flavor of our lifetime. So I know that when these narratives get pushed and when, as I said, in the future we see these apps, just download this app and it'll read your Akashic Records for you, or download this app and it will do a psychic reading for you. It's going to be very tempting for you to go, oh, well, that's what I'll do instead. Okay, and that is your choice. And if you choose to do that, that's completely okay. But please remember that this transhumanistic agenda is part of the devolutionary stream. We have an evolutionary stream that we are under the influence of, and we have a devolutionary stream that we are under the influence of. And we get to choose which one we are going to interact with the most. Okay, this is our choice. This is our free will. This is why discernment and resonance is so important, as in you feeling into, is this right for me or is this not right for me? When it comes to AI, okay, because we're going to see a lot of advancements with AI. It's advancing far quicker than we thought, and God knows what's going on behind the scenes and what they have access to behind the scenes. What we have to remember is it doesn't have heart. It doesn't have soul. It doesn't have a connection to unconditional love and higher consciousness. So we have to choose what we're going to use and how we're going to use it, rather than allowing it to use us in times going forward. The final thing I want to say is that I know that there are people out there in the spiritual community who will tell you that there is no such thing as a devolutionary stream and that everything is love and light, and that we don't have to discern, we don't have to work on connecting to our internal technologies because everything that we can connect into is of the light. And this is their belief, and that is completely okay. This is their belief. And where this really comes from and why this is a dangerous narrative is because this is a wound that is left over from times from Lemuria. In Lemuria, there was this split in society of people who believed that they could open up and just connect to anything and that it was all of higher consciousness and it was all good. And then there were other people in the society who understood that this was a period of materialization, so it was getting denser, and that if they started to open up to just anything, there would be the potential to opening portals to the lower astral plane. And this is quite a technical conversation. That, as always, if you want me to get into more here in the podcast, we can do, but this is where this wounding comes from. And it's a sign of spiritual immaturity, because anyone who has truly gone through spiritual development and experienced different levels of initiations and things know that at this level of consciousness that we are experiencing on planet Earth at this moment in time, you're going to face certain things from the de-evolutionary stream. It's part of the initiation process. So if you hear this narrative of everything's love and light and you want to believe that, that is completely okay. I am just sharing my opinion and my perspective and what I have learned through my own development and helping other people through their development. And there is this aspect of a devolutionary stream that we have to understand, and we have to understand how it's going to present so that we can make those conscious choices in our spiritual development. So I hope this episode has answered the question and made sense. As I said, I've brushed over a few topics that are big, deep topics that if you want me to go into further, I will do. But I just wanted to set the scene for these types of conversations so that when you see them and you think, what would Susie's opinion be? You have the answer here in a podcast episode. So I hope that all makes sense, and I look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode.